Hi, everybody. We have about a minute left before our session begins, so I'd like to run through just a couple housekeeping topics. One, we are recording this, and so if you want to participate but don't want to have your likeness captured, you can keep your camera off. And if you don't want your audio captured, you're welcome to use the chat, and one of us, either myself or one of the panel, will repeat your question for the sake of those watching the recording. Also, if you want to use the captioning services offered by Zoom, it's the auto transcript feature, then you can use the caption button at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. And if you don't see that caption button, you may have your screen minimized a little bit. So just click the one that says more with the 3 dots and you'll find the caption option on the menu that pops up. Last, this is an interactive conference, so we hope that you'll share your questions and your comments, your ideas and your resources in the chat. All right, well, we are at the hour, so I would like to introduce session 10C, Stepping into Diversity Using Virtual Reality to Build Empathy and Inclusion, featuring Kody Stimpson, Katrina Vollmer, and Bernard Johnson Jr. from Arizona State University. I will hand it over to you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm really excited to be here with my colleagues. I'm the Assistant Director for Quality Assurance for ASU Online, so I work closely with the instructional design team. And with me today is Bernard Johnson Jr., one of our instructional designers, and Katrina Vollmer, an instructional designer associate. So we're excited to talk with you about how we've been using virtual reality with the focus on inclusion. A little bit of background about ASU Online. Our team really supports a lot of courses. There are over 300 programs for ASU Online, and this number is from fall of last year, but we're around 63,000 online students. With that number, around 8,000 are first generation students. There's 8,000 military and almost 10,000 first-time freshmen. So everything we do on our team, there's about 35 of us that are on the design team, is around creating a learning experience for our diverse learners that will help them achieve their course goals. ASU has in its mission statement, this is a piece from that. It says, "We are measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how they succeed." So over the past few years, we've been reviewing different design standards to try to develop courses that are inclusive and supportive for our diverse learners. For one, we use the Quality Matters rubric, which is a research-based design standard rubric. And then we also heavily use the Peralta Equity rubric. And using both of these design standards has helped us design courses that really support students as they move through the various courses to earn their degrees. So just something to keep in mind, please do feel free to chat any questions or comments as we go along. There'll be a lot that we'll kind of walk through today, but we have this kind of as a guiding question just to kind of keep it in the back of our minds. How can we harness the power of virtual reality in building a more inclusive and connected community? So these are the 4 topics that we'll be covering. First, we'll talk a little bit about where we started in the history of VR exploration. Then we'll talk about virtual reality and empathy, team building and inclusion, and then finally, we'll discuss some of the pros and cons related to accessibility in virtual reality. So I actually have this first topic to explain a little bit of an overview. Our team, I mentioned, is around 30 designers. And that includes instructional designers, developers, learning technologists, media developers, and videographers, all who support faculty who are designing or enhancing their online courses. And this is our building where historically we worked and we still work there. It's a beautiful building. However, the way that we work has changed since COVID. Our team is a hybrid team where we're working in different times in the office. We also have several on our team who are fully remote in different locations, which is quite similar to most other institutions. But because of this, it's presented some different opportunities. And so virtual reality has helped us address that. About 6 months ago, our director asked us, hey, is anyone interested in exploring virtual reality? And some of the main reasons behind that was to create connections with each other, recognizing that we were all working in different locations and different times. And then also just recognizing that virtual reality is kind of innovative, but what can we do with it in online learning? How can we leverage this for teaching and learning? So, so he purchased these Meta Quest 2 headsets. And the idea originally was to kind of explore, you know, what opportunities are there for innovation, or what opportunities are there related to teaching and learning? So that was kind of the initial thought. We had this 4-week cohort experience. It was optional. Whoever was interested could participate. And during those 4 weeks, we were in small groups of just four individuals, but we would meet every week in Horizon workrooms. And we would kind of explore the tool, try things out. And I can tell you it was really interesting, especially those initial meetings in there, because for one, a lot of us didn't necessarily know each other. For example, Bernard had just barely started working at ASU at the time. And so most of our conversations were happening here in Horizon workrooms. But it was also an interesting experience because there was, I'll say there's a lot of laughter that happened when we were initially logging in. Some of the things didn't quite work how we were expecting. And all of a sudden something, you know, someone's arm was stuck and we kind of had to deal with that. And building in that time to really explore it and have an open conversation really helped to build our team. We had a great time in there. We really got to know each other in an interesting experience. So this was the initial goal, was around, you know, can we build connections with our diverse team and our hybrid team? Can we find opportunities to be innovative? And then what can we do with teaching and learning? So those were kind of the initial goals. So after that 4-week experience, we didn't want to end. And so we kind of talked about it, and we decided to create this VR club for anyone to join. And we meet every Friday in the afternoon, and we all put on our headsets and we go into various different apps, VR apps. Each month we are exploring different topics. So for example, there's one month that everything we do is around teaching, learning, and design. The second month is around work, collaboration, and innovation. And then the third is on team building and healthy culture. So those were some of the things that our group kind of came up with that we're like, okay, we're going to explore this. And so to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, here's a little video to kind of show you what it's like in there if you haven't experienced it.
Entry level to a certain extent for students and learners and faculty, or even a mid-tier level to a certain extent. We don't have
literally cool. And just imagine being in it, like, yeah, visually. And I even rewound it to watch it again. I thought it was such a great way to explain, because I thought to myself, the plates, have you gone to that one where there's
pick up, and then I watched this little video and it kind of introduced him.
So this kind of gives you an idea of what options there were. We also had, let me get my screen to come back up here again. There we go. As we explored this, sorry, it looks like my screen is popping up. There we go. As we explored this, we realized there's an enormous amount of locations to check out. This is an example from something called Spatial, where you can go in and our team explored together. We kind of take turns leading the experiences, but in this case, we explored this art museum. We also were traveling the world and being able to explore different cultures, different places together. And one of my colleagues is someone who hadn't ever really worked at the office before. And it was interesting hearing how she felt in there, because she mentioned that this was like the first time she felt like she's been at the office working since she'd worked with us. So it was very interesting when you think about creating a diverse, workplace where everyone can feel included and everyone is at the table, included in those meetings and in those conversations. Sometimes in Zoom, we have those hybrid meetings where we have some people that are at the office and others that are remote. This really creates an opportunity for everyone to feel like you're there. It's really interesting. So another place we explored is called Immersed. This is another Office VR app where you can pull in your computer and your computer screens and kind of share what you're doing. And so a few colleagues and I went in here and we pulled up a course and we talked about it together and we're kind of exploring that. So that's another example. And then as we went along, we realized that, ASU is a big institution. There's a lot of different things happening in virtual reality. And so we decided to reach out to some of the other units that are using virtual reality. And this is a tour that they gave us of a lab, a VR lab, to kind of learn more about what's happening in the VR space. This is another example from the Dreamscape Learn VR studio, which is used for biology courses where students are able to go in and really explore in a really interesting way. As we continued, we also explored some more accessible options that aren't necessarily VR, but it kind of has that same feel. This is exploring a field together where we, appeared as little images in there, but where, again, it creates that feeling of being together in a certain space. And then finally, during the holidays, we had this holiday party in Horizon Worlds. And this was really, really fun because it provided an opportunity for us all to get together. There was a fire, there was hot chocolate, there was a sled, there's some holiday music playing, but it gave us a shared space where we could get to know each other and really strengthen our connections through that as well. So that's kind of the background on this, this VR club and what initially started this experience. So now we'll go ahead and move forward with my colleagues here. Katrina will tell us more about specifically virtual reality and empathy. Katrina.
Thank you, Kody. So when I started playing around with VR for the first time, to be honest, I was a bit skeptical of the level of empathy it could produce. My thought was, how different can it be from watching a movie or reading a book? Well, I could tell you, after diving in, I was definitely corrected pretty quickly. I can now confidently say that VR truly has tremendous potential in this regard. The level of empathy and understanding towards one another magnifies when we can really step into the perspectives of people of various backgrounds, races, ethnicities, and cultures. So what I'm going to do is show you 3 different VR apps that we experienced and in which I found the level of empathy significant and or surprising in some way. Next slide. So within this app, Anne Frank, we're initially provided with an historical synopsis to give us a background as to, why Anne Frank and her family must go into hiding. And then we're given the opportunity to actually explore the secret annex hideout, traveling from room to room, self-guided, with the capability of actually manipulating objects. So when you pick up certain items, a connected excerpt from her diary is read aloud. So in a sense, she's actually giving the tour. In this video, we're going to see Anne Frank's room decorated with her personal belongings, and you're going to see the VR participant pick up her diary.
Writing lets me get rid of it all. My sorrow disappears, my courage is revived. But, and that's the main question, will I ever be able to write something great? Will I ever be a journalist and a writer? I hope, oh, I do so hope I will, because writing lets me register everything, my thoughts, my ideals, and my fantasies.
Next slide. So being completely immersed in their home with all of their belongings truly made it feel incredibly personal. On top of that, experiencing this visually, auditorily, kinesthetically really strengthened the magnitude of impact and understanding. So I found this particularly impactful given that prior to experiencing this app, I had a strong familiarity with Anne Frank. You know, I'd read the book based on her diary. I had watched shows about her, you know, documentaries, seen pictures of the annex. And yet I found my emotional response was quite overwhelming. This app is a great example of compassionate empathy, which is when we not only can feel their pain, but we want to even take further action and make sure something like this doesn't happen again. We feel the need to be ultra aware of future motivations. Next slide. Within this app, it's called We Live Here. We are immersed in Rocky's homeless campsite. So similarly to the Anne Frank experience, we are given an opportunity to learn about her and her situation by looking at her personal items. In contrast, though, each item we hold gives us a glimpse of her past and current situation using various methods of visual storytelling. So, for example, we'll hear stories just from looking at a photo, or an animated poem will come to life from reading her journal. A psychedelic computer animation surrounds us when we see a memory from her wedding. So in this video, the VR participant picks up one of her prized possessions, the book Black Beauty. And this leads to a joyous memory that she has of working with horses as a ranch hand, which reveals her dream to become a cowboy one day. And you'll see that this thought is abruptly interrupted when the police and sanitation workers come to clear the park and remove her items from her.
Oh man, to get a majestic animal like that, trust you. How does it feel? Like freedom. It's safe. Nobody's gonna hurt you. Do you have a family that loves you? Friends who would take you in? Do you have job security? Did you pay your mortgage?
So go ahead to the next slide, please. An impressive aspect of VR is the variety of storytelling methods possible within a short time frame. And this helps speak to a wider audience, leaving them captivated and engaged on a whole nother level. I felt that this was a great example of emotional empathy, which is when you can quite literally feel the other person's emotions. So, you know, the moment where her shelter was raided, you know, you feel what she's feeling as she walks up and seeing, you know, her things being taken away from her. She feels, you know, overwhelmed. There's a feeling of sadness, distress, even anger. And I actually, when I was in the app, found myself frantically looking around the tent, trying to figure out what to do. What could I do to help? Because it was as though I was really there. Next slide. So the last one, the app Adam Savage's Tested takes us on a journey in his workspace to learn about his many projects. In each episode, we stand right in front of him as he explains his scientific and creative processes, all while incorporating storytelling. So in this video, he explains the significance of this ping pong launcher that he built when he was 15 years old. And he goes on to explain the impact that it made on him when he noticed that, you know, or when he realized that someone outside of his family noticed his personality within his creation.
That was the very first time I ever got outside feedback from outside of my family, from outside of people I knew about something that I had built. And I remember even at 15 being astounded that she saw something like my sense of humor in this object. it is a remarkable thing when we make something and the world tells us about ourselves from the things that we make. This was the first time that happened for me. And I remember just being really surprised by what I learned from what that person got from my
So next slide, please.
very.
So I will say, you know, the videos, the pictures don't do it justice. The feeling that you have standing in front of them in this app is, I can compare it to the feeling of, you know, when you are watching a musician play in a really small venue. It's intimate, you feel connected, and you really, really want to stay engaged with that person. On top of that, incorporating aspects of, you know, science, his creativity, storytelling, his storytelling guides us to understand him and understand his why in more depth. This app, I thought, was a great example of cognitive empathy, also known as perspective taking. It's where you're able to see the perspective of another individual or group. So in this case, we develop a better understanding of why this creation was so meaningful to him. And what I found interesting with this app was that it doesn't incorporate, you know, any extra fancy visuals. There's no objects that you can manipulate, like the previous apps mentioned. It really was truly the simple act of feeling like you're standing there with him that helped prompt that connection. So all in all, you could see that VR really has tremendous benefits, capabilities, and potential when it comes to fostering empathy as experienced by others. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Bernard with team building and inclusion.
Thank you, Katrina. And so in this particular section, I will be covering team building and inclusion. Next slide, please. So here, when we first started off with the VR Club, we were trying to figure out how can we heighten inclusion within our community and within our group. And so some of the things that we were considering was some of the team building and healthy culture aspects. And so some of the things that we leveraged in the VR space were shared experience, meditation. For example, we utilized this one app called Trip, where we all had the opportunity to just do some meditation within each other. And it was really kind of a great experience with that. We also did some different variations of shared experience, like spatial, big screen VR, and things of that nature. Some of the things that we wanted to consider for criteria when we were looking at healthy culture was the cost. How costly would this be, and would it be effective across the board within our space? Also, how easy would it be to access or use? So these are some of the things. Now, some of the things we did leverage was the Horizon Workrooms application, which is our actual foundational application that we utilize on a daily basis when we are in our VR room. And here we have access to our computers that we use on an everyday basis, our keypads, our mouse, our iPhones. We're able to utilize, even if you have a small space at your counter in your kitchen, where you can have your own whiteboard and you're writing on things. So it was really great to leverage and expand our spaces beyond just our traditional real world environment. Next slide, please. And so with regards to work collaboration innovation, this kind of took on another level for us of the experience. Some of the criteria that we looked at was VR shared and similar experience for users with limited or no access to VR. So we had to take that in consideration. In addition, cost acquisition and acquiring headsets. Again, headsets can be quite expensive depending on the brand and how many populations that we have to supply this to. Efficiency was something else that we had to consider. Logistics, whether that those in our organization had a stable internet connection and or access to internet, and then inclusion of individuals with limited access. And some of the benefits that we took away from the work collaboration in our VR different spaces was that the real sense of presence. And I can tell you, as a new employee at ASU, I had the opportunity to meet those who were remote in other states, and it felt like I started working with them. Actually, some of my onboarding process, I took advantage of that and leveraged that onboarding process inside of the VR spaces. And I connected to some, and a fun fact, I connected to some of my colleagues with their avatars. So when I had the opportunity to meet them in person, I said, hey, that does not look like you, because I became acquainted with their VR, their avatar. So it was really interesting being able to have that experience in that space. Now, some of the additional interests for use in the work collaborations that we found helpful was onboarding new hirees, that's myself, enhancing work groups and collaboration, deeper connections with our teams and assigned fully remote roles, and also enhanced team collaborations building. We've done a lot of different instructional design workshops where we look at courses, where we look at different things with regards to how can we incorporate, implement this in a particular course? How can we use this in a work collaboration setting? And so we looked at a lot of different aspects, and every week we have a forum where we do evaluation and assessment on those different tools and how can we implement this and sell this as a best buy or benefit to faculty members. Next slide, please. So Kody did share a quick video of us interacting in a particular VR space. Again, this is us, a short 10-second video operating in a Horizon room. And what I like about the Horizon room, we have the opportunity to change our setting, our surroundings, the background. At times we've been on a lake where we have the back view of the lake. And it's really been, as I say, peaceful, because at times we may be in our work environment where it's a bit stressful. Now we can now change that work environment and we're all at peace and ease. And I'll just play this video. If you can play that for me, Kody, please.
Of course, we got, we did some of the theming of ASU and an instructional designer. And my favorite, who did that? I love that. I love that music over there. That's one of my favorite posters.
Yeah. You did that, Daniel.
But it's just a quick short video. Again, this video does not provide the experience that we've all have encountered in the VR space. And one of the things I want to just bring to highlight is that we love playing Pictionary in our VR spaces. We had definitely a great time with that. Next slide, please. And this is kind of a view, VR view, when we're like in a serene space or we're just taking a trip and this is just me looking out in the VR space and wow, just admiring just this view of it. And it looks more realistic and surreal in the VR space. But again, this is kind of like a visual depiction of that particular experience. Next slide, please, Kody. And so now here I will speak about VR accessibility and discuss a little bit pros and cons with VR accessibility. Next slide. So virtual reality provides a chance for disabled users to explore new worlds and try new experience. So one of the things I want to elaborate a little bit more on this particular slide is that VR allows individuals with disabilities, especially motor disabilities, to overcome certain physical limitations. And so this is one of the biggest things that was important to us, not just us individuals here in our ASU environment, but also individuals outside of that environment who may have muscular dystrophy or who are in a wheelchair. They have the ability to heighten or optimize their limitations. And so this is one of the biggest things and advantages that VR brings to us. Next slide, please. So here are some things I just want to kind of provide a distinction with. When we talk, there's a difference between virtual worlds and virtual reality. So I wanted to bring that to distinction because these are things we have to think about when we bring into implementation of VR into our workspaces or into our course design and different things that we're doing in the higher ed space. So some of the things that we want to consider is that, are we going to go fully immersive into a virtual reality world, or it's just going to be virtual reality? And one of the things just to keep in mind for quick, simple distinctions, that virtual reality is full immersion, where you have headsets. There's a more 3D simulation, and it relies on a collection of various softwares and applications, and there may be a high cost involved with that. So that can be scalable, but it all depends on the end goal. The second thing is virtual worlds. And virtual worlds, a lot of us are utilizing that in our everyday life. So virtual worlds are more 2D. It could be an application that can be accessible from your everyday laptop and or your desktop computer, and it may not include extensive logistics or things to support that. Okay, next slide, please. And here are some pros and cons that again, this list is not all inclusive, but these are some pros and cons that we've experienced with our exploration with our VR. And some of the things that really, for the cons that we notice, a lot of people, I don't want to say complain, but experience motion sickness. Now, the great thing about that, is that some of the VR applications that we utilize, such as our workrooms where we do a lot of our meetings and our collaborations, a lot of them have Zoom functionality in it. So those who are experiencing some motion sickness or accessibility issues with that, they can join a lot of these meetings in Zoom and somewhat still get some of that experience that we would experience utilizing that VR. Again, we noticed that for Pro, that this was alternative interactions. And so again, where individuals who are working remote, they have the ability to feel connected and feel that presence. And so this was really great for us to bring in those who are remote or those who cannot join us in person. And again, we're able to overcome physical limitations. Some of those things when we wanted to go fishing, or we wanted to have a snowball fight, or we wanted to do a kind of engage activity with each other. We have the ability to do that without cost, logistics, putting in costs, orders, and things of that nature. So this was really great. And another thing I want to point out with the Pro, familiarization with environments. So one of our colleagues who's on our VR team, he had the ability to kind of scan some of our workspaces that we utilize every day in person. Some of our conference rooms, some of our cubicles and things of that nature. And he were able to scan that, and we were able to interact in that space and really walk around in that space as if we were actually there. So this wasn't a pre-defaulted space that was provided by app. This was something that we did on our own. And so that was pretty a unique situation. And again, we are growing with some of these explorations, and we are also working with some of our counterparts within the ASU environment to expand on what we're doing. Next slide, please. And so now what I'm getting ready to dive into is how do we design accessible virtual reality experience? Again, some of the things that our group focus on is how can we implement VR into the space for instructional design, for course development, into courses and programs. Another thing, work and collaboration. Another thing, building community. So this is kind of a way on how we kind of look at designing these accessible components required in the VR environment. Next slide, please. So one of the things to keep in mind, we want to speak to when you're looking at designing VR into these different but into the different spaces or concepts. One of the things you want to keep in mind, number one, is the end goal is going to be fully immersive. And so there's a lot of different things that's out there that supports fully immersive. But again, there's a different type of approach, a different type of pedagogies, a different type of outcome mapping and things of that nature when you're looking at virtual reality to incorporate in a fully immersive environment. Your outcomes have to be scalable. Your interactions have to be scalable. So these are things to keep in mind when you are engaging in virtual reality and you're writing it for some type of end goal. Next slide, please. So again, semi-immersive is another approach. So semi-immersive typically is things such as simulations. A lot of our government entities utilize semi-immersive virtual reality for like pilot simulations where there is like a big screen. We have something like that at our volumetric laboratory in our ASU downtown campus, where there are different labs where we do simulations, and it's not fully immersive, but it basically is hybrid and it incorporates concepts from both worlds. So again, students in this particular, with semi-immersive virtual reality have the opportunity to expand on that, utilizing simulations. And again, this is great for those with physical limitations, where they can be sat into a particular chair and they get that opportunity to experience that simulation. Next slide. And then last but not least, if you're going to decide if it's going to be non-immersive. So non-immersive would be things like Second Life, where these are 2D software, Minecraft, which is being utilized a lot in education world. And Second Life allows you to go in as an avatar, where you represent yourself as an avatar. I can speak from prior experience. Years ago when I was working on one of my grad degrees, half of that degree was in Second Life, where we had to travel and go to different worlds, and we had to build out different things in these worlds and interact with each other. Our classrooms were in these non-immersive environments. So again, this is a way to kind of expand on virtual reality and non-immersive environments, if that is the end goal. Next slide, please. And then these are some VR equipment considerations that we will talk about. Next slide. So depicted here in this particular slide, there are variations of headsets. Right now, we are using the Oculus headset Quest 2 in the Pros, but we are not limiting ourselves to those technologies. We will evolve and scale as we see fit and as technology continue to grow. But these are some headsets that are available on the open market. You have your Google Cardboard, we have Oculus, there's the HTC set, and then these are your Google headset. The great thing about the Google headsets, it allows you to use some type of iPhone or Android device to add to that. And again, this kind of helps also with leveraging some of those technologies with that phone device, because everyone does have a phone. So these are some different things. Also, this is just an image of a simulation, some equipment that you can use. Again, that's probably going to be the most expensive approach if you went with a semi-immersive environment where you have to incorporate screens, computers, networks, and things of that nature to support that simulation and things of that nature. And then last but not least, this is more intuitive approach, is just 2D, non-immersive, where we're utilizing a second platform. And again, the price of these are not that expensive, depending. So it just kind of depends on a lot of your approach. Next slide, please.
Bernard, there's the question here: is non-immersive the same as augmented reality?
That's a great question. Non-immersive is more 2D in itself, but the augmented reality allows you to go a little bit deeper into that. I do recall, and I think, Kody, we talked about that, where I showed one of the thing link, where we had a course with a thing link and it was inaccessible for students. And so we created this kind of virtual space, if you will, but in an augmented reality perspective, where students were able to walk around and interact with the different type of components within that space and get a feel for these different things in that space. So yeah, there's some overlapping there, but they're not the same. And then this is just a quick image. It's just showing an individual who has an accessibility where he's able to go fishing in VR. And I just think just something as simple as this just really explains and provides the value and the impact that VR can bring to the world. Again, VR does not solve all our solutions, but in the end, it is a great alternative, a great approach to bringing inclusiveness, building team, community, and just allowing us to collaborate with each other. And it removes a lot of the barriers with costs and just other things that may present barriers to us. So again, we've utilized this and maximized this, and we really love the direction that this is going in. And it's opening up a lot of opportunities in our space with course design, assessments, and you name it. So thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.
Oh, sorry about that. This last slide. This is a great slide where we are at one of our labs at ASU, and this is our Dreamscape initiative. And this is us not utilizing the Meta and Oculus platforms, but this is us using our Dreamscape, and where you strap on these sensors to our hands, and we're able to operate in these different environments. Also, we're able to emulate a classroom. And so this is great. So we share this picture.
Yeah, thank you, Bernard. And I, just to kind of summarize everything we've been talking about today, this experience has been very interesting, because at first, when we first started exploring this, we were, excited to get the headsets and kind of try that out and to be able to see each other in there. But as time goes by, it's amazing how you can really connect. Even though they're avatars, as we're having conversations, as time goes by, it really feels like you're having an in-person conversation with them. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, because you can still have that sense. For example, I had a colleague that was gone. She wasn't able to come in the office for a couple of weeks. And I happened to see her on Friday in Horizon Workrooms. And when she came in, I was like, oh gosh, it's so good to see you. It's been a long time. And we've been chatting through Slack and through email or whatnot, but coming together in that Horizon world, it was as if we were there together. And when you think about that, the places you can go, the locations where you can go and explore and really learn about different topics together, and be able to experience that as students in a class or as colleagues working together, it's a great opportunity to really be able to experience the world that is really impossible in other ways. I love the last slide that Bernard had, this fishing slide. My mother-in-law, actually, she goes VR fishing all the time. She lives several states away. We rarely see her, but my wife and the kids, they all get on there and they're VR fishing together. And they're creating these memories. And as we think about creating connections with people, wherever they may be, being able to experience locations and learning about different things, it's really exciting. So we have a question here from Ava. Actually, there's a couple questions here. Let's see. Have you seen any good uses of AR that can be accessed by online learners? Bernard, would you like to take that one?
Hey, can you repeat that question again?
Yes. Have you seen any good uses of augmented reality that can be accessed by online learners?
That's a great question. I don't want to kind of pinpoint on one use because there's a lot of different best case uses. I think that AR has came a long way, and I think that it's very accessible. I think there's a lot of apps out there that are either free and or low cost that can be scaffolded or scaled to whatever the end goal is. But there are some things out there that really makes things simple. And I know nowadays, just with a QR code that we're able to utilize AR and go into a different type of experience with AR, or even enhance AR with a still image or a stagnant image and have some type of AR implementation with that image and enhance that experience with that particular still. I mean, I'm getting tongue-tied. Sorry about with that particular image. Sorry.
Thank you, Bernard. And Ava's got a question. Have you used the workspaces asynchronously, either as a team or with students? We actually, for our explorations, sometimes we will meet, well, weekly we meet together in whatever the tool is that we're exploring. But the conversation often includes apps that are not like team-based. And so we explore them individually. For example, there's a lot of great biology and science and math and various apps. And so we'll explore those on our own, and then we come together and kind of discuss those. So not everything is about the team. That immersed app that we talked about, that's one where everyone can kind of be together in the office. But I've actually used it because it allows you to have like 3 or 4 computer screens. And when at the office, if I go into a little room and I just have one little laptop, I can put that on and immediately have access to all of my computers. So there's different opportunities that different apps provide.
Workrooms also, I don't know if you noticed in one of the images, you can actually join a workrooms meeting through Zoom, even though you are not using the VR headset as well.
Yeah, that's important because some of our colleagues and some of us actually have gotten nauseous when using some of the apps. And so it's great to have the zoom in option. So it looks like there's a follow-up question about paintings come to life, but that only works in person. And I'm not sure how to adapt that for online learners. No. All the paintings come to life. Yeah, I can imagine that'd be really cool. Something like spatial. And the videos that we showed today, like watching a video, you could watch a video about Anne Frank or about, some of these other things. And a video is way better than a picture, but there's something about being immersed in the experience and sitting along there and moving through it that it just makes it more impactful. As soon as I completed the Anne Frank exercise, I immediately got my daughter and I was like, sit down, put this on and go through this because it's just so amazing. So it's great, and it's exciting to see what will be coming in the future.
Kody, if I can read this from Deborah, she said, we at University of Maryland Global Campus have built our campus in VR and are running several courses in VR, from anatomy, astronomy to speech, and many courses in between. So I want to definitely commend you guys on that advancement. And that is something that we are looking at also. How can we maybe emulate our Ed Plus campus, and how can we maybe leverage some of this with some of our partners and some of our initiatives, and how can we even introduce this into some of our courses where we have our students, even our student success can walk students through a tour and different things to that nature. So yes, I want to commend you guys on that, and I will be excited to kind of see what you guys are doing offline. Thank you for sharing.
Yep, and we have our email addresses here, speaking of which, so feel free to reach out.
We have about 1 minute left, maybe room for one more question, or maybe one last tweet-sized takeaway from our panel.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great to chat with you about this today.
Well, we'd like to thank you, Kody, Bernard, and Katrina. I am going to put in the chat the link that will take you to the recordings when they're ready. We have to do some, first capture them and put them on YouTube and check the captions, but we are excited to be able to capture this. We know we had around 20 people here today, but there are 900 signed up for this conference, and we know many of you are watching the recording right now, so we appreciate your participation as well. And then for those of you who are interested, in 15 minutes, we're going to have one last session for the day. That'll be at 5 p.m. California time and 8 p.m. out east if you're going to come back after dinner. And we know we have a number of folks from New Zealand, Australia, and someone just signed up from Guam. So we're hoping we get some of our Pacific friends to join us as well. So I will put in the chat the link to the, what do we call it, the program at a glance. And but one last time, I'd like to thank our panelists for this presentation. Really eye-opening and exciting to see the developments that folks are making, and really glad to hear you all talking about the equity considerations of these emerging technologies. So thank you.